people that are going to come in this morning are here. If not, they'll be joining us in a minute. I want to welcome you. Good morning. My name is Marie Mayen Cho. I'm the Associate Director for USC Family Caregiver Support Center. It has been 5 years since we have had the opportunity to come together in person, and we also want to welcome those that are joining us virtually. We do have some that are able to join us through Facebook and YouTube, so we're really happy that they're able to do that. It is with great joy and deep gratitude that I welcome you on this beautiful morning. This year's C.A.L.M Caregiver Conference, as I said, it's back after being away for 5 years due to the pandemic. And again, we're just so happy that you're here with us. Today, we gather not just as professionals, family members, or volunteers, but as community, bound by a shared purpose, caring for others with compassion, patience, and love. As most of you know, our center has been supporting family caregivers for over 40 years throughout Los Angeles County. And our mission is to help families and communities master the challenges of caring for older adults with brain impairing conditions and adults with multiple health concerns. We provide free services, and all of our clients are connected with a family consultant who will help you navigate our services. And those include individualized care planning, support groups, educational workshops, and respite. And I know many of our clients who are here are able to benefit from that, even to be able to attend today. So we're really happy that you have access to those services. You will meet some of our team members through some of the breakout sessions that you'll attend this afternoon. But many of you have also stopped at our table already this morning, and so I hope that you've had the chance, if you have not met, those of you that are our clients, if you have not met your assigned family consultant in person, this is the perfect day to do so. So please stop by at the table if you haven't yet and say hello and pick up more information about our programs and services. I was wondering how many of you are here for the first time. So clap once if this is your first time. Wow. Clap twice if this is your not your first time. And clap 3 times if you're excited to be here. Wonderful. Oh, I love the sound of that. All right, and now I would like to share a message from 2 very important individuals. First, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Donna Benton. She's the director of our center, and she has a special welcome message for you. And that will be followed by a warm greeting from Director Susan DeMorris of the California Department of Aging, who join us in celebrating today's conference.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Donna Benton, and I'm the director of the USC Family Caregiver Support Center. And it's both an honor and really a joy to welcome you to our 25th anniversary of the C.A.L.M conference. C.A.L.M stands for Caregivers Are Learning More. You know, I'm really sorry I can't be with you today because I'm on the East Coast and couldn't get back. But please know how much I celebrate this moment with you from wherever I am. Well, today we mark a remarkable milestone in our center's history. But more importantly, we gather to really recognize and uplift you, the family caregiver, because you're the heart and soul of our communities. Now, for over 40 years, this center has stood beside those who give tirelessly, often offering strength, compassion, and care. And this year's theme, empowerment, resilience, and joy, it isn't just a slogan. It really reflects the true spirit of caregiving. I mean, yes, it can be challenging, but when we support one another and lean into resilience and really embrace moments of joy, well, caregiving becomes not just a duty, but a meaningful part of our lives. Today's conference was created with you in mind. We'll explore brain health, caregiving tools and resources, the power of technology, and the healing benefits of music and art. You'll also hear about caregiver isolation and how communities can help us overcome it. I hope you'll all stay for our first Caregiver Film Festival at the end of the day. It's a beautiful celebration that'll be with our USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. Now, this event today would not be possible without the support of our incredible sponsors. So, on behalf of our team and our USC family, we want to give thanks to Independence at Home, who is our empowerment lead sponsor and the first one there for us, Sabra Healthcare, a resilience sponsor, and of course, those who support us all the time at the USC Leonard Davis School of Gerontology, the California Department of Aging, and the LA Aging and Disabilities Department. So your continued sponsorship and partnership really ensures that family caregivers are seen, supported, celebrated each and every day. And to every caregiver here today, this day really is for you. And you embody empowerment through your advocacy, your resilience through your dedication, and joy through the love you give every day. You're not alone, and we see you. So, thank you all for everything you do. Thank you for being here. And here's to 25 years of Caregivers Are Learning More, and we hope many, many more. And now I'm going to stop and welcome, and let's begin this day of celebration together. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan DeMorris. I'm the director of the California Department of Aging, and I'm so happy to welcome you all today to the 25th anniversary, 25 years of the C.A.L.M conference. This year's theme is so representative of what we do at the California Department of Aging and what our partners around the state do every single day. Our 11 caregiver resource centers, shout out to LA Caregiver Resource Center, and our 33 area agencies on aging. I want to thank everyone who contributed to today's event, who helped organize, who are staffing it, and especially I want to thank all of the participants. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you engage, connect, and recharge. Enjoy yourselves.
Thank you to both. It was important for us that you got to hear from both our director, but also from the director of the Department of Aging. They know how important this conference is to all of us, and we're excited that we're back, and we hope to see you again next year. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Mitzi Gonzalez, who will be presenting on caring for the mind, empowering caregivers in supporting brain health. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Gonzalez. The full bio is in your program. Dr. Gonzalez is an associate professor in the Department of Neurology, and she's the director of translational research in the Jonah Goldrich Center of Alzheimer's and Memory Disorders at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. She earned her PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Texas at Austin. Dr. Gonzalez leads research programs aimed at discovering mechanisms underlying neurodegenerative diseases and developing targeted interventions to preserve cognition across the lifespan. Dr. Gonzalez?
Well, thank you so much for that warm introduction and the opportunity to be here today on this 25th anniversary of C.A.L.M. It's very exciting. And so today we're going to take a little bit of journey to talk about how you can care for your mind while at the same time caring for somebody else. And this is going to be a bit of a two-parter. So the first part, we're going to focus on immediate brain health and resilience, and then we're going to talk about long-term. What are some strategies you can put in place to increase your ability to maintain your cognition and your brain health as you age? All right, so caregivers, this comes to a surprise to nobody here, but a caregiver very broadly is just a person who attends to another person's health and well-being. And there are over 12 million caregivers in the United States, and the vast majority of these dedicate their time without pay, more than 19 billion hours a year. And it's so great to have a place like this where there's actually community to gather caregivers together. When we look at who is a caregiver, really we see that caregiving doesn't discriminate. It affects, all races, all ethnicities. Caregivers tend to be female, 66%, but there's a growing proportion of men who are fulfilling this role. And then two groups that really have high caregiving demands in particular. So about 2/3 of individuals who are caregivers are married to the person that they provide care to or live with them full time. And another group that has really high caregiving demands are those that are caring for an older adult in their lives, but at the same time have their own children. And this is kind of referred to as the sandwich generation because they are providing support on both sides. So this is a little picture from a survey that the AARP publishes every 5 years. This one came out in 2020. 2025 has not been released yet, but it should be recently. And so they give surveys to thousands of caregivers across the country for all different indications. And they ask caregivers, what do you think of your own health? How are you doing? And the good news is we see, the vast majority say they're doing pretty good, about 79%, which really showcases the resilience of caregivers. But we do have about 21% who say, I'm really not doing so well. My health is deteriorating a little bit. And when we look at the people who say that their health is not so good, it's nothing about demographics or their personal attributes. It's really about demand, because all of us have a limit in how much we can do every day. And so it's those who have no one else to help them, those who have to provide more care, and caregivers who live with the care recipient, because really those demands are constant. And that was for all caregivers. Caregivers for individuals with brain diseases have extra demands just because of the amount of services that need to be provided really across the board. And I'm a clinical neuropsychologist, so my expertise is on brain health, and I see people with concerns about their memory and thinking. And sometimes I'm seeing people with a neurodegenerative disease, but at the same time, I also hear from a lot of caregivers that they're worried about their own memory and thinking. And in fact, the empirical research supports this. So caregivers tend to report more memory concerns than other people of their age. And why is this? Well, I think a big part of it has to do with just how much you're juggling. Each of us only has so much time, so much attention. Life is already pretty full and busy. And then when you squeeze in those caregiving responsibilities on top of self-care work, family life, personal life, really there are so many demands that are being juggled. And just to kind of talk a little bit about kind of why it might be that sometimes you are not remembering as saliently or as much as you'd like. I want to just take a step back and talk about what it is, like how it is that we actually remember information. And so the big point is that we have to attend to the information. The next step is working memory. So working memory is the ability to hold that information in your mind, manipulate it, think about it deeply. And this is important because that forms these connections in your brain that then become consolidated and allow you to remember it later. And our brains are not designed to process everything in our environment. If they were, we would be completely overwhelmed at all times. If you think about what's happening in this room, you're listening to me talk, you're thinking your own thoughts, you can hear the person next to you breathe, you can feel the chair. If you were thinking about all this at once, it'd be overwhelming. So we have two processes that allow us to allocate our attention. And as a psychologist, we refer to these as the top-down and the bottom-up approaches. So top-down is using that prefrontal cortex, the areas of the brain that developed last, that humans are blessed with. And this is really effortful, volitional attention of directing your focus, and allows us to be successful and achieve a lot of things. At the same time, we have older parts of our brain that are more conserved throughout evolutionary history. And these parts of the brain kind of refer to the bottom-up approach. And this is where something grabs your attention and you focus on it. And oftentimes this is fueled by some type of emotion. And of all the emotions, fear is typically the one that is most salient in grabbing that attention. And so just to put it in context, if you're trying to remember something, but at the same time, you're really worried, you're really stressed, it's going to make it a lot harder to pay attention and to use those more effortful kind of top-down approaches to allocate your attention. So what can we do about it? So basically anything that slows us down and allows us to engage that more effortful, focused part of our attention. One of the big things is just do one task at a time. We all like to multitask. We all like to think we're good at it. The data has showed us time and time again, we are not good at it. So let's stop lying to ourselves and just try to do one thing well at a time. The other is just kind of take a deep breath, allow yourself the resources and the space to be able to focus your attention. Another big thing is writing information down, not only because you have a written record to grab it later, but also because it engages more networks in your mind, right? You're having to actually have the kinesthetic motion of writing something down. You're having the visual processes. So this creates more pathways in your brain and increases the likelihood that you're going to remember it later. And same with visual imagery too. So, putting something like your keys on the counter, if you can really visualize yourself doing it, what happened at that moment, you're more likely to remember it later because you're forming multiple pathways to the same information. I just want to talk a little bit about caregiving experience and how we had echoed today. There are so many positive aspects and so much joy and purpose that comes from caregiving. But at the same time, there can be stress too associated with it. And those two things can coexist. It can be a very meaningful experience and it can be stressful at times, and that's okay. And if you feel that stress, you're not alone, because a lot of individuals who are caregivers for somebody with a neurodegenerative disease do feel emotional or physical stress at times. Stress is kind of funny because it's one of those things that can creep up on us kind of slowly. I'm sure a lot of people in this room are used to juggling lots of different things, and probably are going from one activity to the other. But it's important to recognize those signs of when your stress levels are picking up so that you can stop them early before it is that you're completely exhausted and overwhelmed. And for many of us, we're not taking pauses to really appreciate this. And I know some people find it really helpful just to keep records and to track about how they're feeling. And so this is just an example of a caregiver self-assessment questionnaire. Some people like to do it once a month, and then if they see, there's an uptick in the level of stress or burden, that means it's time that you take a step back and think about what can be done, how can other people help you. So just sharing that resource. And then I wanted to go back a little bit to the neuroscience and talk a little bit about stress and what do we know? How does it affect our body? How does it affect our minds? And so our minds were designed for survival. And if we think about when we initially evolved as a species, this really required us to stave off all types of predators. And so we have a system, it's called fight or flight, that allows us to react. And so the amygdala, which you can see there in pink, it's part of the lower portions of our brain. So this is something that is very much conserved, and its job is to recognize emotion. And it recognizes all and responds to all emotions. But the one that it really gets excited about is fear. So that's, if we put somebody in an fMRI and we look at their brain and we're showing them scary things, we're going to see a big increase in the activity of the amygdala. And the amygdala has direct connections to the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, which coordinate with the rest of the body on releasing hormones. They also trigger the adrenal glands, which are down here in our lower back. And what this does is it releases corticosterone and norepinephrine and adrenaline into our bloodstreams. And so this kicks up that sympathetic nervous system activity, and it leads our heart rate to increase. It increases our blood pressure, our pupils dilate. And so all of these are so adaptive for us to be able to have a quick response. If a tiger is coming for us, we're able to amp up and run away. And so in the short term, it's beneficial, but in the long term, if you're constantly maintaining this level of arousal, of blood pressure being up, this can cause your arteries to harden, and it can also increase inflammation. And our brains learn very much from experience and practice. And so if you have been stressed, you can kind of become sensitized, and your mind can form this loop where that pattern becomes really ingrained, and it kind of almost becomes a default to go into that mode of anxiety. So how do we break this loop? How do we do something else? Well, we have to teach our brain something new. We have to do something to break this loop. And fortunately, just as the body has a mechanism for us to amplify our responses, it also has one that it created for us to slow down. And that's our parasympathetic nervous system. So this is, as opposed to the fight and flight of the sympathetic, the parasympathetic is known for rest and digest. So this allows us to digest, get nutrients, have cellular growth, and it does the complete opposite of what the sympathetic nervous system does. It slows us down. It slows down that breathing rate, lowers the blood pressure, lowers heart rate, allows us to digest. And fortunately for us, there is a very simple mechanism to tap into that parasympathetic nervous system. So the vagus nerve, that's the longest nerve in our body. It leads from the brainstem, and it innervates into our heart, into our lung, all the way into our digestive tract. And the vagus nerve is 75% parasympathetic, so it's really important for guiding this more rest and relaxation. And the way that we can physically tap into it, manipulate it ourselves, is so simple, and I know people get tired of hearing it, but it works. It's controlling our breath. And so there's all different types of breathing methods. One of them that's kind of gained some popularity is 4-7-8. So breathing in slowly through your nose 4 seconds, holding for 7 seconds, and then exhaling for 8 seconds. And of all of these 3 steps, the one that's most important, the one that you don't shortcut, is the exhale, because the exhale is what really taps in our parasympathetic nervous system. And so doing this 4 times can be so helpful for just putting the brakes on from that sympathetic nervous system and tapping in a little bit of this calm. So, and then in addition, sometimes breathing isn't always enough for everybody. And sometimes even though you're breathing, it might be hard to turn those thoughts off that are in your mind at all times. And so another concept, our brain really learns from associations by pairing things together. So if you can also ground yourself into something physical. So whether it is kind of just appreciating your visual environment, noticing a flower, other things, maybe, carrying a little satchel of lavender to be able to smell. One that's often underappreciated but important is also our tactile senses. So, for example, I know someone, and every time she's kind of feeling a little bit anxious, and maybe she's on calls and she can't be, having a moment to have, of just being able to kind of reset. So what she does is she loops her fingers around the outside and just sort of traces them, and and she focuses on that sensation, and that allows her to reground to where she is. And so breathing and then really pairing it with something in your environment to bring you back to that present moment. Okay, so that was the first part of the talk. That's immediate. So that's our short-term exercises. Now we're going to go out into the future. We're going to think long-term. So how do we protect our minds? How do we promote resilience? How do we do everything under our control to try to maximize our brain health and prevent the development of a neurodegenerative disease? Oftentimes I get asked, is Alzheimer's disease or other types of dementia, are they genetic? And the answer is yes and no. So we know genetics certainly play a role. It's estimated that about 55% of dementia risk is through genetics. And usually this is many different types of genes that together contribute to this risk. So we do have that. We all have our own personal risks. We can't choose our parents, right? That's something that we're given. But at the same time, that means that there are 45% of dementia cases that we might be able to prevent, or we might be able to delay just by changing our own behaviors. So let's go into the science and let's see what this looks like. Okay, so The Lancet, which is one of these scientific journals, has done a big review of all of the studies across the world and aggregated all the data to see what are the factors. If we look at people at different stages in their life, what are the things that they're engaging in that allow them to be more likely to be cognitively healthy when they get older? And 14 factors have been identified. So the teal refers to the one that's important to start early in life, and that's the quality of education. And important to start in early life, but also something so important to continue throughout our life. We're constantly learning, growing, forming new connections. The deeper orange color in the center, those are factors that we know to be really important once we start hitting middle age and beyond. And if you look at these factors, so a lot of them have to do with cardiovascular and heart health. So things like managing type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, managing weight, getting physical activity, not smoking. And the reason why this is really important is because your brain, it's really busy and it's really metabolically active. And even though it only weighs about 3 pounds, it takes about 20% of the glucose from the rest of your body. So you need pliant, healthy arteries. And then when we move into the yellow, that's where what's really important as we become into our later years of life. And these are things like correcting visual impairment, engaging with other people, which is great why so many people are out here today, and avoiding pollution. And so that's all observational. This is if we look at data from studies all over. But as a scientist, what we always want is we want experimental data. So we want to see if we change something, do we see a change in outcomes? And this is why scientists do clinical trials in a controlled setting. And so the US Pointer study, so this is a study that recently, very recently in the last 6 months, released its primary endpoint. And so this was a study that was designed to empirically test if changing your health and your lifestyle habits actually improve cognition and thinking. This was a big study. It was over 2,000 older adults, ages 60 to 79, and they had to come in with something to change. Either maybe they were sedentary or maybe their diet was not optimal. And these are individuals, this is important to realize, 80% had a family history of dementia. So these are people who might have some genetics that make them more likely to develop a neurodegenerative disease. And they were assigned either to a self-guided lifestyle intervention or something that was very structured, where they became part of a group and a network that employed these strategies together. And fortunately for us, they have shared the recipe of what did they do. So what were people doing when they were assigned to the structured intervention? So there were 4 components of it. One component of it was monitoring health. So this is things like checking blood pressure, checking glucose levels, looking at cholesterol, and treating those as appropriate. So that was one cornerstone. Then in orange, the other cornerstone is physical activity. So as part of this study, they had people exercise 4 times a week for about 30 minutes, moderate or vigorous aerobic activity. So this is anything that kind of gets your heart rate up a little bit. And then in addition, they had them stretch or do weights twice a week. The teal color there refers to cognitive exercise. So they had people do cognitive tasks on a computer for 30 minutes, 3 times a week. But then in addition, they encouraged them to go out and to do real things in their environment that encourage them to learn and to stretch their mind in new ways. So this could be doing a puzzle. This could be, doing artwork. This could be having a conversation with other people. And then finally, the purple is nutrition. So how many people have heard of the Mediterranean diet? Okay, good. So it's well known. So this is called the MIND diet. And so it's a combination of that Mediterranean diet, but also lowering salt intake as well. And so it really focuses also on foods that are very rich in antioxidants. So things like berries, dark leafy greens like spinach or kale, reducing the amount of red meat, reducing the amount of butter, saturated fat. So really trying to make sure that that diet is really rich in antioxidants and omega-3 fatty acids with things like fish, and lower in things that we know that clog the arteries. So this is what they did. And now I get to show you the data. So this is pretty exciting. This study has been running for many years. And actually, we only first saw the results this summer at a conference in July. So this is pretty hot off the press where they released their endpoint. Okay, so just to orient you here. So what we're looking at over here on that vertical axis, that's cognition. So they gave people a bunch of cognitive tests multiple times, and they aggregated them together to get a summary score. And they tested them many times across the intervention period, every 6 months. And kind of 2 take-homes here. So one, we see that both groups are improving over time. Those who were just told what to do, as well as those who were in something that was more structured and more intensive. And as you can see here, it's that structured group, the group that really committed and were part of a group that had them do these activities together. They were the ones who benefited the most. But overall, we see that cognition is improving, especially for that structured group. And so I think the take-home point, the point that I really want you to remember, is that making changes in health and lifestyle habits can improve thinking skills. And this is even true if you start them late at life. And it's even true if you have a family history of neurodegenerative disease, you're more at risk. And so as the philosophy goes, obviously the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. And so what I encourage you to do for everybody in this room is to just take a moment, look at these factors, maybe take a picture of them, and try to commit. What is one thing? What is one thing that's not overwhelming but is actionable that you can do? Is it, taking a walk a couple of days a week? Is it finally scheduling that doctor's appointment and checking your own cholesterol levels and glucose levels? Is it addressing depression and engaging in therapy and talking about that? But really encourage you to just start small, think about one change. And after that, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And obviously, we care for others by caring for ourselves first. So thank you very much for this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gonzalez, for such an insightful presentation. At this time, we'd like to open the floor for any questions for Dr. Gonzalez. Okay, we have a question in the back, and we do have a microphone, so if we can, oh, there's one.
Yes, it's on.
Yes.
One of the things that I was interested in was the fact up there where it said traumatic brain injury. So as we all know that kids are very involved in sports these days, and one of the things that happens a lot in soccer is called a hitter, right? And even though the person doesn't exhibit any type of injury at the time, can you elaborate a little bit of that and what those people that are older now and said, hey, I was always doing that. I played football, I hit my head, I had 1 or 2 concussions. How can I now make up for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, we know a lot more now about the role of head injury, and there's more of a proactive stance about testing people after they've had a concussion, giving them more time to recover, having better helmet designs. But we did not have that necessarily 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so what can happen with head injury is we know that head injury itself, if we look at people's brains after they pass away, people with repetitive head injury, not all people, but some people who've had repetitive head injuries, even mild head injuries, they can show an accumulation of a protein called tau, which we know also accumulates in Alzheimer's disease. And so it can actually cause physical damage to the brain itself. It also seems like there might be some role of genetics too, that some people are a little more vulnerable to developing these symptoms as well. So, you know, I would say the big thing would be protect your brain as much as possible. Avoid tasks that are going to be putting you in danger. You know, riding a bike, please wear a helmet. Do those things to protect your brain. If you do have a concussion, let's say you fall and hit your head, the other thing would be to really slow down after that. Give your body a chance to heal from it before immediately going back to activity. Your brain does have some processes to help you recover, and so you can't go too quickly back into activity. And that's one of the reasons why now part of the guidance is if somebody has a concussion, that they do take some time to recover before getting back on the field. And so we can't reverse what's happened before. Those are risk factors we have to know about going forward, but a really great question and an active area of scientific research.
Dr. Gonzalez, I do have a question. With respect to testing for dementia, I feel like previously, I'm talking about 20 years ago or more, the tools that we have to test are pretty crude. And I feel like there's a lot of very high functioning, very intelligent people with a lot of brain resource that actually do have dementia, and they're being missed year after year after year until the losses are so great that the crude testing methods can actually pick it up. Is there anything right now or in the works that's being designed to catch those people so we can start treating them earlier?
Really great question. So there is so much interest in this question that you bring up, because we know from the data that starting treatment early seems to benefit people. And so there's a couple of exciting things on the horizon. One is, I have to say as a neuropsychologist, that our field has been rather slow to adapt, but now finally people are welcoming in technology. And if we think about doing a test on a tablet versus on a piece of paper, we get so much more data, that granular data that looks at response speed, even in terms of, just seconds, also looks at the way that you perhaps plan or how much time it takes you before you jump into action. What is the pattern of responses? So I think digital testing is huge in a way for us to be able to detect people. And it is a challenge because everybody starts at a different baseline. And so if you have some of these quick measures that people are able to do, once a year, once every 2 years, you start getting more data for a strong baseline so you can look at changes over time. And so I think that's one. And then the other is, at least for Alzheimer's disease, now we also have other ways of testing for the disease. So the disease, of course, is based on the clinical symptoms, but we can also test some of the biological markers as well. And this is for people that have symptoms of memory impairment. So things like a PET scan, which has a tracer that binds to proteins in the brain associated with Alzheimer's disease, a lumbar puncture, and now we even have blood tests that are FDA approved. And so all of those are methods that are letting us actually look at the biology and be able to diagnose people sooner. But I think you bring a good point, and also education is so important too, right? Of letting different primary care providers know and just teaching people how to do a good assessment and why brain health and cognition should be part of every annual visit. I think for a long time there was some sense of nihilism where people thought, oh, there's nothing that can be done, and so we're just not going to talk about that. But the data shows us that's not true, right? Not only are there medications, but there's also things in regards to lifestyle that we know are beneficial. So being proactive, getting testing, providing education to everybody about the importance of brain health, I think is a big part of our mission.
Actually, if you can hold your question for after the next presentation, since we're running a little behind schedule, I really want to be able to get through those, and then we definitely take your questions. And Dr. Gonzalez will also be available after, if we're not able to answer your questions. Alejandra, would you like to come?
All right, well, let's give a round of applause again. Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Like Dr. Gonzalez mentioned, it's never too late to change our lifestyle. So the fact that you're even here, taking time out of your daily routines is a big change, right? And focusing on our self-care. So thank you again for taking time. I'm going to go ahead and present our next keynote speaker, Nadia Paredes. Nadia is a mental health expert and trainer with Project Hope, where she works to empower local healthcare workers and strengthen community-based mental health programs around the world. She also serves as the president of the American Art Therapy Association, and she is both a licensed marriage and family therapist and a registered art therapist. Through her work, Nadia helps individuals and groups tap into their inner creativity to support emotional healing and resilience. With her background in art therapy and intuition painting, she develops programs that foster mindfulness, empowerment, and personal growth through the creative process. So today, she'll share insights from her global and therapeutic experience in her presentation titled, Carrying the Invisible Load, Building the Resilience Through Art and Mindful Caregiving. Her work reminds us that creativity and mindful caregiving, we can transform the invisible burdens we carry into strength, resilience, and healing. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Nadia Paredes.
Thank you so much. Again, such a nice introduction. Anyhow, so también hablo español, entonces cualquier cosa, si luego me ven y tienen preguntas, por favor, no duden y acérquense y con gusto platicamos también. I was just informing that I also speak Spanish, so in case that people want to approach me later, that they can also do that. Anyhow, so let's go. All right, so well, that's me. This morning, I'm actually taking the place of my dear colleague, Stacy, couldn't be here with us today. She's a music therapist. She was supposed to be here. You might see that in the pamphlet, so I just wanted to name that fact. She's actually responding to the Jamaica emergency response that's going on right now. So that's why I'm here today with you, and that's why you might have seen a change in the program. Oh, sorry, my name tag keeps falling. All right, so after the fires, I'm pretty sure you know, like this year has been very, very eventful for Los Angeles, right? It started off in January with a gigantic fire that affected a lot of our communities and probably a lot of us here. And so I'm just curious, has anybody here a fire survivor? Or anybody that was affected by the fires? Right, thank you. It's like, I'm also a fire survivor, so my heart goes to you. So again, in the wake of the 2025 fires, all communities, across Los Angeles, we lived something very tragic and very traumatic, right? That even though we weren't close to it or directly affected by it, we felt the pain. We felt the pain of our communities, of our neighbors, of nature. And so what happened is Project Hope was honored to just come back and support this time of healing and recovery. And what we have been doing here as part of the emergency response that we do, we have been providing workshops, for caregivers, for first responders. We've also been working on giving emotional well-being to children that have been affected, to all the people, that have been going through stress and trauma. And I know that it is not the only thing that Los Angeles has been going through this year. So we just wanted to acknowledge the fact, that our goal is to help everyone. We really want to help everyone, carry this weight of the experience in a way that feels more human, in a way that feels, grounded, supported, building community, and, so that we can all move forward in a healthier and, better way. So today, to get us started, I want to bring you a practice that I love doing in art therapy, because as we know, visualizing, seeing things helps us feel better. Sometimes the power of imagination can take our brains off of the daily stresses. And actually research has shown that doing 10 minutes of art, just 10 minutes, equals a 2-hour nap. Imagine that. I was like, so I know that probably most of you cannot take a 2-hour nap because of all the duties that you're doing, but you probably have 10 minutes, to at least engage in some art or some creative endeavor and, just to take that edge off and then continue doing all the great work that you do. So right now, what I'm going to invite you to do is we're going to do a very brief meditation that I'm hoping, you can later do on your own. And the way we're going to start, again, if it feels safe for you, you can close your eyes right now. If it doesn't feel safe for you to close your eyes, you can always just look downward, look down to your legs as you're sitting so that you start to prepare your mind to stop being in this alert mode and just going a little bit into a quieter space. So if you can now just simply, close your eyes or look down. And I want to invite you to take a deep breath in through your nose. And slowly breathe out through your mouth, releasing any tension in your body, relaxing your body, welcoming it into the present moment. Take another deep breath in and notice the tension that builds when you're breathing in. And as you notice this tension, just breathe it out and use it to soften your body, loosen any parts, making sure you feel comfortable in that chair you're in. And one last time, deepest breath yet, breathe in through the nose. And slowly breathe out through your mouth and release all the worries, tensions of the day, and just be present right now in this room. And I want you to imagine a place that brings you joy. This place can be a real place that you know, or it can be an imaginary place, or it can be a place in nature. Just simply find a place that brings you joy. We're going to use our imagination, our mind's eye, to go to this space. And imagine you can walk around it. And I want you now to use your curiosity and start to explore this space of joy. And maybe note some colors that stand out to you in this space. Notice the different colors that are happening around. And as you keep exploring this space with joy and curiosity, I want you to notice if there are any sounds in this space. Notice what can you hear in this space that might also help you bring more joy into your soul right now. And as you continue to explore, I want you to notice the temperature of that imaginary space that you're exploring right now. Does it feel cold? Does it feel warm? Or does it feel just right for you? Notice how it feels on your skin as you're walking through this joyful moment. And as you continue to explore, maybe notice the smells. What smells are in this joyful space that you're exploring? Maybe, these are smells that you're familiar with that bring you that sense of joy and peace. Maybe they're just calming and soothing. And once you've explored that smells, that bring that comfort back into your soul, I want you to try and see if there's anything that you can taste in this space. Maybe there's some food around that you can try. Or maybe some herbs. Maybe, depending on the space, there might be food that you can just put in your mouth and get the taste of this joyful space. And once you have explored this space that is joyful and that you've gone through it with all of your 5 senses, I want you to know that this space is available to you anytime you want. You can always come back with your closed eyes and just reconnect using all of your senses to be back here inside of you, a space that can help you bring calm, bring strength, and bring more joy into your life. So as we are coming back into the real space where we're in today at this conference, I want you to just simply to wiggle your feet a little bit if you can. Start moving your legs. Maybe start moving your hips side to side if you can. Maybe notice your belly, your back. Notice your chest. Notice your shoulders, your neck. If you can start moving it a little bit side to side. Yes. I see some necks rolling here. Beautiful. Now notice your jaw. Try to soften it a little bit. Notice your face and try to soften it. And now notice, your hair, the top of your head. And when you're ready, you're going to take one deep breath in. And as you breathe out, you can start slowly opening your eyes or holding your head up again. Just coming back. Another deep breath in if you need it. A little stretch, maybe. Because some of us are like, no, I'm relaxed. Right? So this is, again, a very short visualization, guided meditation. And you can do this, right? You can do this as you notice. It's just exploring a space that you can visualize and then using all your senses to go through it. So that can you bring yourself back to present. So what is stress, right? Is anybody here familiar with the feeling of stress? No? All right, well, let me tell you, you're in for a treat. So stress, is a normal reaction. Stress, when it's healthy, it's supposed to help us get our bodies ready to react. Like originally, stress was here to help us get into action. Problem is, when stress is prolonged, it starts to become unhealthy, right? Because now we're on a constant state of arousal and of emergency, and we're feeling constantly, like we're not going to survive. So that, as Dr. Mitzi was sharing with us, will of course start to affect your health. Stress involves, many different things that start to affect our bodies, our minds, the way we are. And these changes caused in our mind and body will, of course, start to have psychological and physiological consequences, right? We can start to get sick, both mentally and, physically. We all experience stress differently. So you will have, cognitive ways. Maybe some of you here can think of like, I'm constantly thinking, and just thinking about the same things over and over again. Yes, and see some nodding heads. For some of us, it's more, kind of like, again, that future, trying to plan for some unknown future, but not really being able to plan for it. Or having unrealistic expectations of like, oh, maybe magically something tomorrow will happen and everything will go away. Right? I was like, that happens to me all the time. Like, maybe aliens will come and save us. I don't know. At this point, I'll take it. We also have physical reactions. Some of us, maybe we're trying to notice, that neck pain that doesn't go away, or maybe, that heart beats that are just getting out of control. For some of us, it might be affecting our sleep. It's like maybe nightmares, maybe just not being able to sleep or staying asleep. You will also see behavioral changes. Maybe you started to isolate more. You started to not be around people, feeling like you're not connecting because people are really trying to help you, but they don't, right? Because you're like, oh, no worries, it'll get better. And you're like, I know it won't, right? Or feeling like you're not really understood. Or people being like, oh, no, try not to stress. It's like, who has ever calmed down by being told to calm down? I was like, oh, calm down. You're like, oh, look at me calming down, right? So that doesn't happen, right? Then you have also a spiritual maybe crisis going on. Maybe you were very spiritual before and suddenly you feel abandoned by God or abandoned, by a superior source because you're like, I can't be holding all of this and all this pain constantly. And that is a very hurtful space to be in. And maybe you stop going to church, or also you don't have time to go, to temple anymore because you're so worried, with all the things that are going on. So you start to lose parts of yourself that are very important, which starts to affect, of course, your emotions, right? You start to be moody. You start to, you just start to get into fights with people for no reason, right? I know if you're in this sandwich, taking care of children and adults at the same time, you're maybe snapping at your kids and it was not their fault, right? Or you snap, at your loved one and it's not their fault, right? You know that they're not doing it on purpose, but you can't help it. Your emotions are all over the place. And so you start to have repetitive thoughts. You start to, again, go back into a cycle, right? And it all just apparently never ends. So, of course, stress will affect our lives, as we were hearing before, and we will have physiological things that are happening that might affect our physical health. And again, all the stress hormones and going into adrenaline, which at first is great because the adrenaline might help you plan better and feel like, yes, I can take on all the tasks. But after a couple of months or years, that's not working anymore, right? Like you no longer have the strength to go like, yes, let's do this, which starts to then take us into negative coping. I don't know. It's like, do I have any stress eaters in here? I was like, thank you. It was like, for me, post fires, I realized I started to eat a lot of potato chips. That's like my go-to. And suddenly I went to my checkup and guess what? Cholesterol was up the roof, like through the roof. So stress is real. And when we go with stress and it just keeps going, and it never ends, guess what happens? It can lead to a trauma response, right? Because now your body is used to just being in the survival mode. You're no longer living, you're now surviving. And that can definitely start affecting our health. So what is trauma? Trauma is an emotional response to a life-threatening event, right? And for us, caregiving, it's not a life-threatening event on a daily basis, but it can be experienced in your body like it is. Because, things are improving. On the contrary, sometimes things are getting worse. And so you start to feel helplessness and hopelessness. Like there's a point where we get to a space of, what could be seen as depression. So with trauma, it shows up in everyday life, right? How do you know that you're actually now going more into a trauma response? Like it's no longer stress. Now it's starting to become a traumatic response of your body. So you will start to see yourself maybe having more difficulty concentrating or paying attention to the people around you, like you're just not listening anymore. You start to feel just exhausted. You're emotionally done. You're like, I just can't take one more stressor in our lives. Or maybe we start again disconnecting from others because we feel unheard, as I was saying earlier. And we start to feel on edge. Like maybe you start to feel like the smallest of things makes you like just fall down. Like you're not finding a parking space to get into a doctor's appointment. And suddenly you find yourself just crying or being absolutely hysterical for something that, you know, maybe on a regular level, you wouldn't be taking it as personal. And all of this can be heightened by that invisible load. I love that image, that Dr. Mitzi provided for us earlier of that like person divided into like 400 million hands and trying to wear all these different hats. And so what happens is that not all trauma is visible. Again, maybe if you're a fire survivor, maybe there was something specific that triggered you this year. Or maybe, all the social unrest that we've been experiencing in the city throughout this year as well affected you in some way. And yes, there's like a thing you can name. But the majority of times that's not the case, particularly if you're a caregiver. If you're a caregiver, just being in a constant state of having to plan 100 things for someone else's survival becomes a lack of survival for yourself. Because you're not only worrying about you, you're now worrying about someone else. And those small tasks of, doing groceries, cooking, when do I do all of that if I'm at the same time trying to remember medication and trying to remember I have to schedule a doctor's appointment and I have to, on top of that, maybe, go and pick up this thing, go to the cleaners, like all the planning that takes place that we might think like it's everyday life is a stressor, right? Because of, again, the added layers that are given to us. And again, you start to feel those same symptoms of anxiety, irritability, forgetting things. So it's kind of like it's all part of like this big package of what's happening. And who carries this? Probably, I would tell you, this invisible load affects caregivers the most. And by caregivers, I not only mean like you're giving care to someone, but just being a parent, also part of that invisible load. Because now you have to think of, and my kids and the school and the homework and the blah, 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 blah. And so you're going, again, through all these things. When you're caring for someone else, that load that is put on your shoulders that seems to be everyday life planning is not necessarily the only kind of like, it's very much very typical in anybody who's providing care, right? This can be first responders. This can be, again, therapists. This can be everybody. So why acknowledging this matters? It really matters because that's the first step towards healing. If I can't identify this for myself, I can't make anything about it. I can't do anything about it, right? If I'm not noticing, I'm actually going through all of this, the silence will lead you then, it can lead you to burnout, to a point where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. And then you completely check out from the whole giving, caregiving experience. Or it starts again to give you depression or some anxiety disorder. So it can go down very quickly, very fast. You can also experience compassion fatigue, and I'll talk about this in a little bit. And you can also, I think the worst part is the isolation. Humans are social beings and we need to be connected. And that's why just for you being here today and connecting to others and being able to speak to the similar experiences you all are having is huge, right? Because then you feel seen. And you don't have to explain yourself to the other like it might happen in our everyday lives where you're like trying to explain like this is how I'm feeling and people feeling like they need to fix you and, oh, here you go, here's some weird advice and you're like, oh, I don't know, right? It's not for me. But then you have compassion fatigue. I mean, look at this little puppy over here, right? You're all like, I can feel you, puppy. That's how I want to be right now. Just under the covers. So the emotional residue that we have because we're in the business, because, again, even if you're not getting paid, this is a job. And if you're constantly giving, and you're not getting back, then of course you will start to get tired of the job, right? Because you will start, and I tell this to my students all the time who are doing mental health services. I'm a supervisor, and I'm always telling them, like, what are you doing to bring yourself back and to give yourself back a little bit? Because you're giving so much that it is impossible to keep up when you're just giving. So of course you're gonna get tired, right? This residue will build in, and it starts to sometimes build resentment. Resentment is a very heavy feeling to carry, right? So what we want to do is that we really want to, and this happens, of course, if you're living a traumatic situation, because it's not improving. It's not like you see the end of the tunnel. It's just there. So it's really hard to be like, when will this be over, right? And so what happens is we have a window of tolerance, right? Like we all human beings, there's some level of stress, as I was saying earlier, that is healthy, is the one that will activate you to do something, to change, to be better, right? So because usually we live in this yellow zone, right? Like you can tolerate things, you might feel stress, but it doesn't bother you. Again, you're late to that doctor's appointment and you need to find parking, but you're not really that bothered. You're just like stressed, like, oh my God, let us just get quickly. And but then you move on. You found the parking spot, you get to the appointment and you move on. You're not stressing as much. But if you are overly loaded, then you can get activated. And then you can go into the red zone, which is that hyperarousal. What does it mean? You're active. You're going to be angry. You're going to be anxious. You're going to be feeling all the feelings, and it's very intense. And you don't know what to do with yourself. It's very, very overwhelming, right? And it's your body that wants to really do that fight or flight from this situation. It's not like you can really choose it on your own, like, oh, I just want to be literally angry so I can just yell at people. No, this is just you reacting to what's happening and your body being like, I can't hold this anymore. And then you will have the hypoarousal, because that can also happen. And that is that space, when you're sunned out, you're just completely disconnected. Sunned out, you don't care anymore. I know after the fires, I started to experience the hypoarousal because I was like, I wasn't even enjoying life. It's not that I was upset or that I was angry, but I also noticed I wasn't enjoying anything either. Everything was just like a meh. Oh, we went to see this beautiful play my son did. And I was like, oh, and I saw all the parents crying and being like super emotional. And I was just like, okay, I get it. It's nice, but, right? So that's when I started to notice, hey, what's happening to me? I'm a mental health expert. I train people on how to manage their stress, how to control trauma. I've been treating clients for years, and suddenly here I am, right? Completely burned out. Because I was caring for everybody, right? I was providing services for my students, for my family, right? My son lost his school to the fires, so it was a complete nightmare to be dealing with, like, where's my son going and who's taking care of him, and I'm working and I'm trying to support my students and I'm trying to teach and I'm trying to do all the things and helping my clients. So of course I burned out, right? But I didn't notice it until my son went back to school this school year, and I was fine for 6 months. And suddenly all crashed down to the ground. Incredible nightmares, I couldn't sleep, I, again, not enjoying anything. And it just became, again, very real that I was in that blue zone and that I needed more help, that I couldn't just be playing superhero, which is basically my favorite thing to be, right? Because I feel good and empowered and yes, changing the world. But guess what? Even Superman needs to go back to the fortress of solitude and take some sun in so that he can heal. And he's Superman, by the way. Just saying. I'm pretty sure Superwoman would be like, oh, I don't have time for that. It's like, I'm just going to go to the supermarket and get ourselves ready for the next day. Meal prepping. It's my caregiving, advice. So, anyhow, how we see stress, we can definitely start feeling like we can identify maybe tension in our bodies. How do we help, right? I just told you all the scary stories, and I hope that you don't stay with the scary stories. I want you not to give some resources so that you know what to do with it. What is that you're going to do in that temple of solitude that is only like 10 minutes a day, so you can take your 2-hour nap. So one of the things we can do is using the body to self-regulate again, right? So I want you to think of a space, think of, again, stress. Imagine your stress, and I want you to identify a color for that stress. Just for a moment, what color is your stress today, right? What color is it? Once you have that color, I want you to imagine this color lives in a part of your body. If you were to identify where stress is home, where does it live in your body? All over. There you go. I love it. It's like it's everywhere. You're like, this thing is already built like a residence situation happening. It's a whole neighborhood now. Right? So just imagine, again, that stress. Imagine where it is. For some of you, it might be very focalized, much like, stress lives in headaches. Stress lives in shoulders, stomach aches, Hands, maybe, a lot of holding tension, maybe your jawline, you're having to use night guards because you're holding all the tension there, right? Okay, so what you're gonna do once you've identified, I want you to imagine, we're gonna do something called a hand sculpture, right? You're gonna use your hands, and we're gonna do a sculpture with our hands, all right? So I want you to simply imagine, if you need to, again, close your eyes, you can. If you don't need to close your eyes, that's okay. And just imagine that stress that you identified somewhere, even if it's in your whole body, right? I want you to imagine that stress now is flowing all the way to your hands. Imagine, again, that color going from a specific space or from your entire body, and just imagine it's gonna be going to your hands. It's just gonna move towards your hands. And once that, you can notice again that color is now covering your entire hands, or that energy that you just moved from your body and just focus it on your hands. I want you to now create a sculpture with your hands that represents that tension. How does that look like? Maybe you're gonna intertwine your fingers and just really tense them up and hold a lot of tension in your hands. Maybe it's just pushing one hand against the other. And I want you to really feel that tension. Maybe you're closing your fists and, kind of like having them clash against each other. Maybe for some of you, it's just doing a very uncomfortable position. So I'm going to invite you to just hold that tension in your hands. And if you can also do that hand sculpture. And just sit with that feeling of tension, noticing that you're safe, you're okay, even though it feels uncomfortable. You're just sitting with that discomfort, in your hands, and it's holding all of that stress, and you're noticing, but I'm okay. Nothing is happening, right? I can be tense, and I'm still safe. And now that we've sat with that tension, I want you now to release your hands. Just soften those hands. Maybe you want to move them a little bit to release some of that tension. And now I'm going to invite you to now do a sculpture that represents peace with your hands. How would your hands stand if you were at peace? Maybe you're holding them against your legs, looking up, or maybe you're putting your hands down. Maybe they're in a prayer pose. Maybe they're just in this space of holding. Now I want you to notice that sensation in your body. That sensation of holding peace. Noticing, okay, here I am, and I'm safe, and I can hold this peaceful sentiment. And then I'm going to imagine that this color of stress is now released into the air. It's going to be released into the atmosphere. It's going to be taken away. I no longer need to carry this stress. Not right now, not in this moment, not today. So once that you've, again, let that go, you can always do this. Holding tension is something that we can all do, right? Tension, sometimes we need to experience it because we block it. What we tend to do with stress is we just repress it and we don't feel it. And that's when it starts to creep up in our body, in headaches, in neck problems, stomach problems, and all of that. Because you're like, I'm not stressed. And your body's like, oh, no, you're not stressed. No worries. I'm just going to save this feeling and going to put it in here, in this body part, so that you're okay and that we can move on. But by allowing ourselves to feel the tension, by doing that tension in your body, what you're doing is you're showing yourself that you can actually feel this uncomfortable feeling, and that you're also able to let it go, and that you're able to create the opposite by actually connecting to peace. Because let me tell you, in positive psychology, one of the things that we talk a lot is also peaceful and positive feelings can feel very threatening if you're under a lot of stress. Because you're like, if I'm feeling peaceful, it means I'm not doing something. It means I'm not taking care of things. So sometimes feeling that joy and that peace may sound like, yes, that's what I want to feel. But when you feel it, either your body's preparing to when will it stop? Okay, I'm feeling great right now, but it's probably going to be taken away from me. So I might as well not feel it. Or it feels like I'm not doing enough. It means that I'm not doing all the things that I can. So what can we do for self-regulation, right? I think that breathing is one of the most common ones, but I also have a lot of clients who complain like it's not doing anything for me. Like I tried the breathing and it doesn't work. It's not helping me anymore. And so what we realized in our therapy is that our nervous system, when we create through three different parts of our entire self. We create through the body, the sensory, we create through the emotional, and we also create through the cognitive. So for some people, they might be more comfortable regulating through the mind. For some people, they might be more comfortable regulating through their emotions. And for some, yes, the sensory is great. So the sensory means the body. Like you use your body to calm down and to come back to present. So breathing, as we were saying, is great. Blocking sensory input for me this, past couple of months, I just bought myself noise canceling, headphones, and it made the difference. Like I was still working, I was cooking, I was doing all the things, but because I wasn't getting all that noise, my mind just calmed down. And again, you can still hear if somebody comes in, hey, can you help me? But you're still isolated from more input than you already can hold. You can, again, do exercises, dance. I highly recommend dancing, but because it's an art form, but I can also tell you just going out for that walk, just being outside can help. For you, maybe molding dough. I can tell you Play-Doh, this very thing, you can buy in any supermarket. It's great. Like I'm usually just playing around with it while I'm talking to someone, and just that smell brings me back to center. Just playing around with it because I'm moving my hands. It's helping me come back again to the present moment and not be just thinking about other things. Knitting is also a good thing. If I have knitters here in the house, knitting is actually a great activity for self-care because it's very mindful. You have to stay present in what you're doing, but at the same time, you're having all this input, of the yarn and, and the needles, or, if you're doing it with your hands, of course, that will bring you back to center using the body. If the body's not your thing, you can always start with the emotional, just identifying how you're feeling, right? Taking those tests, that Dr. Mitzi was saying, or just taking a moment in the day. There's all these great online lists of emotions, and just taking every day at night a moment to think about how am I feeling today, and looking through the list and just starting to note them down. You can draw. I always tell my clients to just use a calendar, and I was like, and assign a color to that feeling. I was like, and then you can just start, every day do a little dot on that calendar of yours, and then you'll start to see patterns of color. And maybe you can start to be like, oh, wait, I am feeling very overwhelmed, or, oh, I've been feeling stressed for a very long time. I hadn't noticed, right? So it's kind of like having it outside can help. Of course, connecting to others, having someone to vent with, going to events like this where you can connect to people that are going through the same difficult experience as you also really much helps with your emotions. I'm always, I always tell people coloring, using coloring books. It sounds like a very simple childish activity, but when you assign emotions to your colors and then you color in with those colors, you're taking those emotions out of your system. They're no longer inside of you. You've put them out on paper. They're no longer part of you, right? So that's another thing you can do. You can print them out. You can buy a coloring book, and a couple of pencils. And just that day, as I asked you today, what color is it today? That's it. What color is my anger, my frustration, my whatever it is today? And then you'll also find, of course, the cognitive, when you're someone who's very much in the mind, who thinks a lot, who has a harder time connecting to emotions or their body. Maybe we can start with positive self-talk, catching ourselves, how negative we are with ourselves and how self-demanding we are, right? How many of us are like, I'm not doing enough? Like, how many of you here feel like you're not doing enough? Right? I see a lot of nodding, some hands up there. It's like, yes. And that's the thinking that is tricking us, right, into more stress. Because it thinks, if I'm more stressed, I'm going to get that adrenaline shot, and I'm going to be able to plan better and do more. But the truth is not a long-term sustainable practice. So it's important to just catch ourselves with I'm being very harsh. Just naming it. I'm being very harsh. It's like, I am someone who's worth of love, someone who's doing their best. I may not get it right all the time, but I do the majority of the time, and that's okay. You know, practicing mindfulness is just holding these thoughts and feelings and just being like, yeah, I'm being very hard on myself today. Not to feel guilty or bad that you did. It's just like I just noticed. I'm being very harsh on myself. Okay, good. Something to note so that I can change that pattern. You can think of, again, journaling, writing. I would just say just writing down on a journal can be very grounding, very soothing. Art journaling is even better, if you ask me. I do a lot of work around art journaling. And I think it's just great to have a space where you can just really let it all out. All the thoughts and feelings that we might be, embarrassed to share with others because of how we're feeling, because of this journey of being a caregiver. You might feel like, I'm going to be such a bad person if people know that I'm getting tired or that I get annoyed and that I get frustrated. But it is true. You will get those feelings. That doesn't mean you don't love your loved one, right? It just means that you're carrying a big load. So find a space where you can be private. A journal is private. You write about it, you maybe paint about it, and then you have it out. And sometimes just having, those positive affirmations, I think some people will be like, oh, that is not as good. I'm like, well, sometimes we need those reminders, right? I love writing Post-its for myself, in the mirror, because again, self-demanding, very here too. So I'm always kind of like seeing that, remember you're doing your best, and you failed, you will try again tomorrow, right? So that is it for me. Thank you very much. And again, I'm here if you have any other questions.
Thank you, Nadia. And I must say that I was so relaxed that I almost fell asleep. I heard some snoring around there, so I caught you guys. But very inspiring and insightful support that we could apply in our caregiving journey. So thank you very much. I know we're wrapping up and ready to go for our lunch, but we'll take a few questions. So any questions that you might have, if you want to raise your hand very quickly, and we'll go around just to wrap it up. I see some over here.
Yeah. What is art journaling?
So basically, art journaling, a journal is where you write, right? Like what happens every day. So art journaling is like, instead of or on top of writing, you include some visual image that represents how you're feeling in, like that day. So for example, you're like, I'm super angry today. And then you're like, I feel like a volcano that's about to explode. So maybe you draw a volcano that day, or you find an image of a volcano that you can put inside that journal. And then if you want, maybe sometimes just seeing that volcano in there feels like, yes, this is me right now. And you close it and move on. But maybe sometimes you might want to write as well, to be like, I am like a volcano today because, I don't know, got an appointment canceled, medication didn't get on time, I couldn't go and pick up this or do that, or, whatever it is happening. But it is about kind of like using visual expression on top of writing expression to make the expression more meaningful. Sorry for the redundancy. But yes. Does that work? Yes. Okay. Right.
And I know that we have a few more questions, but I think you said you were going to stay also here, right? For maybe if you could follow up with Nadia out at the resource fair area for any other specific questions you might have for her. But if we could give a round of applause for Nadia, please. Thank you very much for your support. We appreciate it.
No more.
Thank you, Alejandra. And I want to apologize to Alejandra. First of all, I didn't even introduce you to an amazing, wonderful family consultant. Please. I think many of you know her, but I wanted to get started with the presentations and I failed to introduce her. She's just an amazing family consultant, an amazing person as well, but thank you so much for supporting us. I want to thank both of our presenters, but I just wanted to make sure that I cover a couple of things to guide you through your afternoon. So we're about to start lunch. We should have started a few minutes ago, but lunch is waiting for us. So lunch will be served in the same area where you came in. You saw the beautiful tables set out. Please enjoy your lunch. You can also go to the resource tables that are still out there. They're going to be here until 3 o'clock. However, there are other things that I want to make sure that that you're aware. You could hear some of the music playing. He arrived he arrived on time, right? But the music he plays is amazing. He plays acoustic guitar, and you'll love it. So you'll enjoy that during lunch. Please, if you haven't done so, purchase some raffle tickets. You've seen the baskets on display. But one of the things that you don't know is that we have a great, one of the raffles is also going to be an iPad. So when you arrived, you were given a passport, to make sure you go to every table. So when you complete visiting all of the tables and you complete your passport, you return it to where the raffle table is, and you'll be given a ticket so that would be an opportunity to win possibly the iPad. But also, please complete a registration after your afternoon session. The breakout sessions, so we have 3 breakout sessions that are also going to be offered virtually. So for those, those that are joining us virtually, they'll be able to participate in the links. They should have received them already, but they're also available to them. Resource tables, again, they're available. The baskets, the iPad. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure is that for the film festival, so the film festival will start at 2:30 after, you have some time after your afternoon session, and you can stay as long as you are able to, because as long as your schedule allows it. The film festival is going to go on until like 7. And so we wanted to have an overlap so that at a minimum, you get to enjoy the first film, and they're also going to have an amazing panel discussion. So they're beautiful films that are specifically about caregiving, and we just thought, what a great opportunity to bring it together. The School of Gerontology has worked very hard to get these films available to us, and so please feel free to stay, again, as long as you want, as long as you can. There's plenty of food, so you'll have the energy. The presentations this morning were just truly amazing reminders. Many of these things you have heard before, but guess what? We forget them, right? Because we're so busy. It's like, oh, that's right, I could be doing that. I have to share with you, when we were told to look at a color, my color was red from my shoulders. And would you believe it that later it changed to like a blue or green? I thought, wait a minute, she has a lot of power. But it works, right? It works. She's a powerful woman. But it works. So please take those tips that you learned this morning with you. The thing about that, if you do art for, 10 minutes? 10 minutes is like 2 hours of a nap. Wow, how amazing is that? So please take that with you. Join us outside, enjoy your lunch, and also enjoy the beautiful music. So thank you so much.